Right now, as you're watching this video, there's an invisible chain around your neck. You can't see it, you can't touch it, but it's there. And every single day, it gets a little bit tighter. This chain isn't made of metal. It's made of something far more powerful. It's made of debt. And here's what they don't want you to know. Debt isn't just a financial tool. It's the most sophisticated weapon ever created to control human behavior. And you're the target. Think about it. When was the last time you made a major life decision without thinking about money? Choosing a career? Debt influenced it. Deciding where to live? Debt shaped it. Even the person you married, whether you admit it or not, your financial situation played a role. That's not coincidence. That's by design. My name is on the screen, and I've spent the last 15 years studying financial systems, economic policy, and the psychology of money. I've watched governments rise and fall, currencies collapse, and millions of people trapped in cycles they never understood. And what I'm about to share with you isn't taught in schools, it's not discussed on mainstream media, and it's definitely not something the financial industry wants you to understand, because once you see debt for what it really is, everything changes. Your relationship with money changes. Your understanding of power changes. Your entire worldview shifts. And that's exactly why this information is so dangerous to those who benefit from keeping you in the dark. Asterisk. But here's where it gets really interesting. The weapon I'm talking about isn't wielded by some shadowy organization in a back room. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's happening in plain sight every single day through mechanisms so normalized that we don't even question them anymore. Student loans, credit cards, mortgages, car financing. Buy now, pay later. These aren't just products. They're ammunition. And the trigger is being pulled on your future right now. Stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how this weapon works, who's using it, and most importantly, how to defend yourself against it. Asterisk, let me take you back in time. Not to some ancient civilization, but to a moment that changed everything. 1971. August 15th. President Richard Nixon appeared on television and announced that the United States would no longer convert dollars to gold. In that single moment, he severed the last connection between currency and tangible value. Now, why does this matter? Because it fundamentally changed what money is. Before that day, money represented something real, something finite. After that day, money became an idea. A promise. And here's the kicker. Promises can be manufactured infinitely. This created the perfect environment for debt to become weaponized. When money is backed by nothing but confidence and future promises, debt becomes the mechanism through which value is extracted from the future and consumed in the present. Think about that. We're literally eating our own future. But the weapon goes deeper. Throughout history, those who controlled debt controlled everything. In ancient Rome, debt slavery was a legitimate practice. You couldn't pay. You became property. The Renaissance banking families like the Medici didn't rule through armies. They ruled through loans. They understood something profound. The debtor is always servant to the lender. Fast forward to today, and the system has just gotten more sophisticated. We don't call it slavery anymore. We call it financial obligation. We don't use chains. We use credit scores. We don't force compliance through violence. We force it through the threat of financial ruin. But make no mistake, the fundamental dynamic hasn't changed. Control the debt, control the person. Asterisk, here's how the weapon works in your life right now. You're 18 years old. You want to build a better future. Society tells you the path is clear. Go to college. But college costs money you don't have. No problem, there are student loans. Easy to get, impossible to discharge, even in bankruptcy. So you borrow $30,000, $50,000, maybe even $100,000. You're told it's an investment in yourself. What they don't tell you is that you've just signed away the next 10, 20, maybe 30 years of your life. Your career choices are no longer about passion or purpose. They're about making payments. You graduate. You need a car to get to work. Another loan. You want to start a family. You need a house. The biggest loan of your life. By your mid-30s, you're carrying hundreds of thousands in debt. And here's the trap. You can't stop working. You can't take risks. You can't speak out against your employer. You can't pursue that business idea. You can't do anything that might jeopardize your income. You've become predictable, controllable, safe. And that's exactly the point. The average American now carries over $90,000 in debt. Credit card debt alone exceeds $1 trillion nationally. Student loan debt? $1.7 trillion. Mortgages? Over $11 trillion. These aren't just numbers. These are chains. Invisible, socially acceptable chains. And the brilliant part? We volunteered for them. Nobody forced us at gunpoint. We signed the papers willingly. We even felt grateful for the opportunity. That's the genius of this weapon. It masquerades as help. Asterisk, so who's wielding this weapon? Let's follow the money. When you take out a loan, who profits? Obviously, the lender through interest. But it goes so much deeper. Banks create money through lending. This isn't metaphorical. When a bank approves your mortgage, they're not lending you money that someone else deposited. They're creating new money, digital entries in a ledger backed by your promise to repay with real labor over decades. They create money with a keystroke and you repay it with years of your life. But the banks are just the visible layer. Behind them are central banks that control interest rates and money supply. Behind them are governments that benefit from a population too indebted to revolt, too busy making payments to pay attention to policy. Behind them are corporations that get a steady supply of workers who can't afford to quit. It's an ecosystem of control. And debt is the oxygen that keeps it alive. Asterisk now. If you're finding this valuable, if this is making you see money differently, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. This channel exists to give you the financial education that the system hopes you never get. Every week, I break down the mechanisms of power and wealth that operate behind the scenes. Don't let the algorithm decide your financial future. Take control, subscribe, and let's continue. Asterisk, here's where the weapon becomes truly sophisticated. The psychological component. Debt doesn't just control your finances. It rewires your brain. Studies show that financial stress activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Your body literally treats debt like an injury. This creates constant background anxiety. You're always aware of it, always calculating, always worried. This mental load reduces your cognitive capacity for everything else. You're literally less able to think clearly, plan long-term, or make optimal decisions. This is called cognitive scarcity, and it's devastatingly effective. When you're worried about making rent, you're not thinking about organizing politically. When you're stressed about credit card payments, you're not questioning the system. You're just trying to survive within it, but there's another layer. Debt creates shame. We live in a culture that treats financial struggle as personal failure. Can't pay your bills? You must be irresponsible. Drowning in student loans? You should have chosen a better degree. Lost your home? You shouldn't have bought what you couldn't afford. This shame isolates people. It prevents collective action. If everyone thinks their debt is a personal failing rather than a systemic feature, they'll never unite to challenge the system itself. Shame is a control mechanism, and debt generates it automatically. There's also the status component. In modern society, your worth is often measured by your purchasing power. But most people's purchasing power comes from credit, not actual wealth. So we're trapped in a cycle of borrowing to maintain appearances, which creates more debt, which requires more work, which leaves less time to question any of it. You're on a hamster wheel, and debt keeps the wheel spinning. Now, let's zoom out. What I've described works on individuals, but the exact same weapon operates at the national level. And this is where it becomes truly frightening. Developing nations are kept perpetually poor through debt. The mechanism is simple but brutal. A country needs infrastructure. The World Bank or IMF offers loans. The loans come with conditions. Open your markets, privatize your resources, cut social spending. The country complies, takes the loan, but the debt is structured so that it can never be fully repaid. The interest payments alone consume huge portions of the national budget. Money that could go to education, healthcare, or development instead flows to international creditors. The country stays poor, stays dependent, stays controllable. It's colonialism with a balance sheet instead of gunboats. Even wealthy nations aren't immune. The United States national debt exceeds $33 trillion. That's trillion with a T who holds this debt. Foreign governments, central banks, institutional investors. Every dollar of that debt represents leverage over American policy. When your creditors are foreign powers, your sovereignty is compromised. When your economy depends on continually rolling over debt, you can't make bold changes. You have to keep the game going. You have to keep your creditors happy. You have to maintain confidence in your currency and your bonds. This is how empires become fragile. Not through military defeat, but through financial entanglement. The weapon of debt is being used not just on you, but on entire nations. And the wielders of this weapon are those with the capital to lend, the power to set terms, and the patience to collect for generations. So what do? How do you defend yourself against a weapon this pervasive? First, recognize it. You can't fight what you can't see. Understand that debt isn't neutral. It's not just a tool. It's a control mechanism, and awareness is the first step to freedom. Second, distinguish between productive and destructive debt. Borrowing to acquire an asset that generates income or appreciates can be strategic. Borrowing to fund consumption is almost always a trap. That vacation on a credit card? Trap. That new car you can't really afford? Trap. The furniture on a payment plan? Trap. Third, prioritize debt elimination with the same urgency you'd treat a physical threat. Because that's what it is. Every month you carry debt, you're giving away a piece of your future. Attack it aggressively. Live below your means not to impress others, but to free yourself. Fourth, build financial buffers. An emergency fund isn't just about money. It's about options. It's about being able to say no. To walk away from a bad job. To weather a crisis without going further into debt. Freedom isn't wealth. Freedom is options, and options require resources you actually own. Fifth, change your relationship with consumption. The system wants you to define yourself through what you buy. Resist that programming. Find identity and satisfaction outside the marketplace. This isn't about being cheap. It's about being free. Sixth, educate yourself financially. Learn how money really works. Understand interest rates, compound growth, asset classes, and economic cycles. The system banks on your ignorance, literally. The less you know, the easier you are to exploit. And finally, recognize that individual action isn't enough. This is a systemic issue that requires systemic solutions. Demand policy changes. Support candidates who prioritize financial education and debt relief. Advocate for regulations that protect borrowers. Join or support organizations fighting for economic justice. The weapon of debt is powerful, but it's not invincible. It requires your participation. Your signature on the loan documents. Your acceptance of the terms. Your belief that this is just how things have to be. Here's the truth they don't want you to understand. The system needs you far more than you need the system. Your labor creates the value. Your future repayments fund their present wealth. Your compliance maintains their power. The moment you stop participating, the moment enough people refuse to play by rules designed to exploit them, the entire structure becomes vulnerable. That's why financial literacy is so threatening. That's why they don't teach this in schools. That's why this conversation makes some people uncomfortable. Because debt, as a weapon, only works if people don't realize they're under attack. Once you see it, once you understand how it functions and who it serves, you can't unsee it. And that awareness is the beginning of resistance. You now know something that most people will go their entire lives without understanding. You've seen behind the curtain. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? If this video opened your eyes, I need you to do two things. First, subscribe to this channel. We're building a community of people who refuse to be financial victims, who understand the game and are learning to play it differently. Second, share this video. Send it to someone who needs to hear this message. Post it on your social media. The most powerful thing you can do is spread awareness. The weapon of debt works in darkness. Let's bring it into the light. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. And remember, your financial freedom isn't just about you. It's about everyone you'll inspire along the way.